Hi, it's Mindy with Astrology by Love. So today we are going to be talking about Michael Jackson. So honestly, I had a little bit of a difficult time finding a picture because of all his transformations over the years with all the different plastic surgeries that he did. So we are going to talk in this video about were the energies there, the possibility that he could have been a child molester, and we're also going to talk about the energies that were there at his death, and both of those I'm going to be talking about towards the end, so watch all the way through. So to get started, this is Michael Jackson's chart. So he was born August 29th, 1958 in Gary, Indiana. I got this chart off of Astro.by.love, so if you want to pause the video, go print one out, you can follow along with me. The first thing I noticed in Michael Jackson's chart were all these planets. Where are we? All these planets right here in the 6th house. So he has 5. Traditionally, there's 10 planets, so half of them are in the 6th house. I am using Western astrology, and this is a Placidius system chart that I'm using. So because half of the planets are in Michael Jackson's 6th house, I'm going to be talking a lot about the 6th house today. I'm going to go more in depth than I would normally do for a house. So the 6th house tells us about our daily routines. So, and these are really more the monotonous ones, the behind the scenes work, mundane tasks. So this includes, but it's not limited to, cleaning the house, grocery shopping, eating, exercising, taking care of pets. Pets are talked about in the 6th house. Daily vitamins, medicines, laundry, dishes, the clothes we wear for work, our sleep schedule. It shows, whether we're a good sleeper or not, and also the cleaning of our body. So, and these are some of the routines and daily chores the 6th house rules. There's others. You can always expand on this. But in ancient astrology, the 6th house was considered a malefic house. It was, you really didn't want any planets there. It was considered a very negative placement. So it was called the house of slaves and servants. So this was a house where there was a lot of hard work and very, very little reward. So Michael's got 5 planets in the 6th house. So this energy can show that you are a slave or a servant, or it can show that you have slaves or servants. And a lot of times when an energy is in someone's life, it manifests multiple ways. So it can manifest directly in your life, and it can manifest in other people with that energy coming into your life. If you've read anything about Michael Jackson's early life, his father was considered a taskmaster. They worked very hard in the Jackson 5, getting down dance routines and singing routines, and they did have success with that. So, that was a benefit, but that was a lot of hard work, especially for a child. Most children would be in school, coming home playing, not necessarily practicing dance. So that was a lot of time and energy. The 6th house is also known as the house of illnesses and can show areas of struggles. So planets in the 6th house tend to be weakened. They're not operating at their best. They're not, at their strongest. And whenever there's some sort of contact from a malefic planet, it can be even more detrimental. So Michael, unfortunately, has contact from Mars to Uranus, Venus, and Mercury. And I'm not going to talk about his Saturn today, but it's up here on his MC, and it is trining the other planets. So he's got 5 planets in a malefic house and negative contacts to these planets. So this is hard. This is hard. So the 6th house also shows, where we will transform and grow in our life through tests and struggles. And yeah, that's how we grow. That's how we learn. That's how we become hopefully better. And so the sixth house is traditionally ruled by Virgo, who is known to be a hard worker, pays attention to details. Virgo is ruled by the planet Mercury, as is Gemini, but we're talking about Virgo right now. And Mercury rules our thoughts and our words, but also travel, schedules, machines, things like that. And when you have planets in the sixth house, it makes you feel like you're a machine, like you're doing passionless work, tedious, monotonous practice. So if you're looking at your chart and you too have lots of planets in the sixth house, just know you're going to have to work a lot. And, people with planets in the sixth house have that impulse anyways. They're basically, the workaholics of the world. And there's other placements that can cause that energy too, but the sixth house, definitely, you're a worker. So, and Michael Jackson was a worker. He worked hard. So now that we have all that covered, let's also talk about Leo ruling Michael Jackson's house. So the constellation of Leo does not bring the energy of servants or slaves. Leo is the king. They're in charge. They like a lot of attention, flair, drama. And so Leo's not really at home in the sixth house. This isn't a detrimental placement for Leo, but it's also not a really good fit either. So it's a neutral energy. So planets in the sixth house work hard, but with Leo there, they want their credit too. So imagine, a young child who had cleaned their room and they go and get their mama to come see the clean room so their mama can applaud. That's the energy we're talking about here. And so Michael Jackson's Mercury is in Leo. And once again, Mercury rules how we think and speak. It likes details and progress. And when it's in Leo, it brings a dramatic flair to it. People with Mercury in Leo do well in acting and speaking and, being up in front of people, being seen. And so Michael Jackson, definitely had his Mercury in Leo. People with Mercury in Leo like to big talks. They like to talk big, think big, and they can tell a story like none other. So it's always very interesting. Maybe a bit exaggerated. People with their Mercury in Leo, a lot of times are accused of being liars or con artists. And this isn't necessarily so. They may just be expanding on the truth a little bit, making the story more interesting. And if they are questioned about it, Leos have egos, big egos, delicate egos. And so they may, lie in those moments to defend their egos or the stories, but Leo likes to exaggerate and make it bigger and better. I think probably one of the better ways this energy can play out is through singing songs. So, the words in the songs are never 100% what's going on in your life, what's happening. It's a theatrical moment. It's releasing that Mercury in Leo in probably the best way. I mean, singing gives you a poetic license, basically a right to stretch the truth in what you say. So this is a really good way for that to play out. Getting that energy out there and singing, excellent. So Michael Jackson also has his Venus loosely conjunct his Mercury. So right here we've got Mercury. So we've got Mercury with the little ears on top, and then we've got Venus there. And so it's a loose conjunction. So they're about 8 degrees apart, but it is applying, and it is something that affects his life. So when Venus is in Leo, so Venus and Leo conjunct Mercury can give Michael Jackson a great singing voice. It can also give him kind words, sweet words, a pleasant voice, And when Venus is in Leo, it doubles down on that Venus energy. So Leo, once again, likes to give big, huge presents, huge dramatic gestures. They will give the best compliments. When Leo is in love, they do it big, loud, and proud. So that's just how Leo works. When they love somebody, they do over-the-top romantic gestures. If they see something in the store they think is beautiful, they buy it. So someone with Venus in Leo in the 6th house may have an enormous love of pets and animals. And say have an orangutan, baboon, elephant, giraffe, and a chimpanzee named Bubbles at their house, like Michael Jackson did with his petting zoo at Neverland. So that is an excellent way to show how Venus in Leo in the 6th house played out in his life. And also Uranus is in the loose conjunction with Venus, and so that's right here. Uranus is at 13 degrees and Venus is at 17 degrees. So there's a 4-degree separation there. Not super close, but definitely felt. And when Uranus is involved with Venus like this, it can give an unpredictable and unusual fashion sense. I think Michael Jackson did stand out with what he wore, and definitely in a crowd you could spot him. It can give a unique voice with Mercury being there, and also some pretty fantastic and one-of-a-kind dance moves. So that's really cool. Like, we see that's, part of Michael Jackson's life, and we see that. I also need to talk some more about this Mercury-Venus-Uranus conjunction, but we're going to finish the other planets first. So Michael Jackson's sun in the 6th house is right here. So it's at 6 degrees of Virgo, 6 degrees of Virgo, and then Pluto's at 2 degrees. And so his sun is 4 degrees from his descendant, the opposite side, the descendant, and Pluto's right there as well. So when a person has their sun on the descendant, they only feel really good in long-term relationships. Like, they need that companionship. Nothing wrong with that. Some people are built to always be in relationships, enjoy relationships. They're naturally good at them. And so Pluto is there as well, which has given him an intense focus and obsession over wanting to be in a long-term, loving, committed relationship. However, there's a hiccup. So we can also see that the North Node, 23 degrees of Libra, is in Michael's 7th house, which puts his South Node in the 1st house. So the North Node is basically where we're going in life, but we're so immature and uneducated in that area that it doesn't even seem possible. It's like a sumo wrestler trying to be a ballet star. It just doesn't even seem possible. But our North Node is where the universe and fate are going to constantly keep pushing us. It definitely provides growth moments. So, Michael Jackson was obsessed with other people and wanted to be in these long-term relationships, but the North Node can kind of like mess up attempts at stuff until about later in life. So, the thing he wanted and was obsessed with, he was very immature and insecure about his skills to have it. Once again, that's hard. And he's got, his Mars square Venus in the mix of it as well. So also with the South Node in your 1st house, it shows that your comfort zone is to be all about yourself. It doesn't even occur to you to think about others. You are the star, the center of attention. And, we've talked about his Venus and Mercury in Leo. So he's already got that energy going on. So this is just doubling down. Like, Michael Jackson wants a relationship, but he's self-focused. So, anyways, let's go back to this Mercury-Venus-Uranus conjunction. So that's, right here, Mercury, Venus, Uranus in the 6th house all together. So, we've talked about how the 6th house can show physical routines and characteristics. And so I believe this energy, it probably played out multiple ways in Michael's life, but 2 ways that I want to talk about. So the first, Uranus conjunct Venus in the 6th house, square to his Mars and Taurus. It's also opposite Chiron. So here's Chiron in his 12th house, and it is opposite this conjunction here. And here is Mars squaring that. So that's super difficult. So, okay, I thought I'd already talked about the Mars square Venus, but I haven't. So when Mars is square to Venus, it shows someone, Venus is what you want, Mars is how you go about getting it. But Michael, all his impulses and what he thinks he needs to do to get it is wrong, and then makes it more difficult to get it. So, Mars square Venus it can be abusive. It's not necessarily abusive, but typically Mars is going after it. It's getting frustrated. It typically tries to control what it wants, and when you're controlled, you're not like, oh my gosh, I love you. No, you're like, whoa, buddy, step back. And so, his Mars in the 2nd house, really likes stuff, really likes to impulse buy and get things. And it's also, Mars is ferocious, rules metal and aggression. And yeah, a Mars-Venus square can be very, very frustrating placement. So, and his Chiron is also opposite Venus. So when someone's Chiron is opposite Venus, it can make them feel unwanted and unloved. So they see themselves as grotesque and the opposite of beautiful. Like, they know they're ugly. So, I believe one of the ways that this energy of Uranus, Venus, Mercury conjunction, square Mars and opposite Chiron played out in Michael's life was through all his plastic surgeries. So he went under the knife several times to try to have a more beautiful face, to try and feel better, to try and attract love that he was thinking about and wanting so bad. And the more plastic surgery he had, the more unusual he looked, and it had probably the opposite effect. He had several numerous and obvious plastic surgeries throughout his life, and that Mars square can bring aggression towards beauty and what you think is beautiful. So, Michael went under the knife several times, and so that's one of the ways this tragic energy played out in his life. So the second way I believe it played out in his life, whenever there are contacts between Uranus and Mars, or Uranus and Venus, especially if they're negative contacts like squares or conjunctions or oppositions, there is definitely some unusual, outside of the box sexual energy. So, there are ancient texts that call these perversions. I know we live in a society and we don't like to judge or necessarily use that word, but that's what ancient texts say. So, something also to note, Leo is the traditional ruler of the 5th house. And the 5th house, is our casual dating, fun. It rules children. We know Michael enjoyed bringing children to his Neverland Ranch. So, that energy's there. And with Mercury involved in his Uranus and Venus conjunction, Michael thought quite a bit about this unusual sexual energy that, he had those impulses in his life. And then, of course, once again, Chiron is in the 12th house opposite this. And that's just a really difficult placement for Chiron. Your 12th house is traditionally known as the house of endings. It rules our subconscious, unconscious, dream life, sex life, foreign countries, traditional institutions like churches, prisons, hospitals. We know Michael spent a lot of time in hospitals due to all his surgeries. And when Chiron's in your 12th house, you have some sort of constant pain in your life and you don't know why. You don't know what the root is. You don't know what the cause is. There's a psychological perception of hurt and insult of some type, and just about some kind of negative stress that comes from every conversation or observed behavior. So, Michael could see two people talking, and they could be talking about him, and they could be talking about, man, he's awesome, he's, won these awards, this, that, and the other. But Michael's going to see them talking and have a perceived notion that they're bashing him and saying something negative, and he's going to feel bad about that. And he may, observe some behavior that has nothing to do with him, but, automatically think, oh, that person doesn't like me, oh, that person is shunning me, when, he wasn't even on their mind. So 12th house Chiron is just like a constant rejection, and it's not a physical rejection, it's an internal psychological mechanism. And, so this Chiron in the 12th is opposite this Uranus, Venus, Mercury. So when you've got the 12th house Chiron irritating and frustrating these unusual sexual impulses that he's constantly thinking about, and then it's square Mars, so he doesn't know how to go after it. He's obsessed with other people and long-term relationships, and the South Node in that first house is making him think about himself and being selfish. What I'm saying is that the impulse to molest children was there. And there have definitely, the energies are there. Like astrologically, the footprint is there for those impulses to have been in his life. And, this is definitely not the funnest part of the reading, but, there are victims out there, and I don't want to dishonor them or discredit them. They have gone through a lot. Like, this was not a fun experience for them. Michael wasn't necessarily a psychologically healthy human when he was around going through all this, but those are the two ways that difficult energy of this Uranus, Venus, Mercury conjunction, square Mars, and opposite Chiron played out. So I'm now going to talk about the transits that Michael was experiencing, right about the time that he passed. I'm also going to talk about Dr. Conrad Murray's chart as well, and how that affected everything. Fatima H., you had asked about death indicators. There's not necessarily one specific death indicator. There have been people who claim to have techniques and know about things. William Lilly had a technique where he could predict death. However, his 47th year of life, he thought he was going to die, and he didn't. So you can see negative energies going on, and you can protect yourself during that time. I mean, that's why you have an astrologer, is to guide you and lead you, or that's why you learn about astrology, so that you can see these energies coming up. Michael Jackson died, in his sleep from a drug overdose and had a heart attack. So the first thing I look at, if there's a mystery surrounding the death or drugs, I look to Neptune. So Neptune is one of the outer planets. It's got heavy, intense energy. It can bring about confusion and delusion, and if there's something to do with drugs, that's like your fantasy life in your fantasy world. So the first thing I did was I looked to where Neptune was in Michael Jackson's chart, or Neptune was transiting at the time of Michael Jackson's death. So I have an ephemeris here. Michael Jackson died June 25th, 2009. You can go to astrology.by.love and have an ephemeris printed out. This is basically a spreadsheet showing where the planets were on certain days. They're fabulous. So on the day that Michael died, Neptune was at 26 degrees of Aquarius, as was Jupiter, as was Chiron. So that would have placed it about right here in his chart, 26 degrees. So right here, about 5 degrees away from his natal Chiron. So you've got Neptune, Jupiter, which expands things and enlarges them, and Chiron. And these are all opposing his Mercury right here in the 6th house. So that's already the way you think, the way you speak, and there's delusion and fantasy there. So, we've talked, Michael had lots of plastic surgeries. So he has been under anesthesia more often than most people. And so Dr. Conrad Murray's testimony was that Michael had asked him to put him under, I think it was Propanol, a drug that puts you out during surgery. And this isn't something you can just slip a patient or whatever. I mean, there's an IV bag involved. Michael's definitely a participant here. And so, we see that energy there, like the expansion of it opposite Mercury. Yeah, I mean, it's totally believable that Michael was asking for this, and for him to have been doing this for quite some time, because Neptune moves slowly in the sky. So this is like an energy that would have been coming up, and then with Jupiter there expanding it, these are detrimental energies. So Mars and Venus, interestingly enough, were also at the 17 and 18 degree point of Taurus when he passed. So they were right here, just before getting to his natal Mars. So Venus and Mars were together in the sky, squaring all these different energies, setting this off. So he had the Chiron being set off opposite this, and then he had this Mars energy being set off opposite this. These are really difficult energies, and they're affecting an already difficult area of his chart. So this is what was going on when Michael Jackson died. I also wanted to talk about his Dr. Conrad Murray's chart. So when two charts come together, it's called Synastry. And, our souls are built up with these energies that, we inherited from the universe, at the time we were born. So when we come in contact with other people, their sets of energies are setting off our sets of energies, and that's how we interact. Sometimes you just automatically like somebody. That's, the positive energies coming together. Sometimes you automatically don't like somebody, and that's, once again, the combination of energies coming together. So Michael Jackson and Conrad Murray clicked. They had some good energies together. There was also some negative ones, but I wanted to talk real quick about these three. So Dr. Conrad Murray's Mercury was in Pisces at the same degree as Michael Jackson's moon. So the way that Conrad Murray talked and spoke and, thought about things was very comforting to Michael. Michael liked him instantly. It set his mind at ease. Now, his Jupiter was also at 14 degrees of Taurus. So we just talked about that. Michael's Mars is a little bit further, and then that Venus-Mercury conjunction is there. So his Jupiter feels good to whatever planet it's touching. So that's Michael's Mars, how he goes after things. So that does feel good to him, but it also sets off that Venus-Mercury Uranus conjunction in the 6th house we've been talking about. So it sets that off and then expands the energy. So that's even worse. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about, his Pluto, Dr. Conrad Murphy's Pluto was at 21 degrees of Leo right here. So that is between Michael's Venus and Mercury right there. So whenever there are Pluto contacts between one person and another, whoever has the Pluto energy being activated in their chart typically has control, has the power. They may not realize it, they may not use it, but Michael's mind and Venus and that energy of his life was obsessed with Dr. Conrad Murray, and so he not only liked the way he talked and listened to him, he was obsessed with him. And so all these energies were surrounding Michael Jackson when he died. Michael Jackson accomplished a lot in his life, and he also there were definitely some tragic moments. So his was a hard life and a life of struggles, despite all the money and all the abundance that people see and think, that's what it's all about. No, he had some psychological demons he battled his entire life. So anyways, I appreciate you hanging out with me today. Fatima H, thank you for the suggestion of Michael Jackson. Anybody else who wants me to do a celebrity chart, tell in the comments below who you want me to do, and I'll do a video on them. Also, like and subscribe to get more of my videos, and I will see y'all in 2 weeks. Thank you.